Greetings! Welcome to this beautiful Imbolc festival. This is a workshop called Intoning the Goddess, in particular, the goddess Brigid. I'm Reverend Char Bear. I'm one of your Circle Sanctuary ministers, and I'm so delighted to be able to be with you here today. Now, where I'm standing is in a eucalyptus grove at Natural Bridges Park, which is in Santa Cruz, California. That's right on the upper tip of the Monterey Bay on the northern coast. Traditionally, this is the tribal lands of the Amamutsan people, part of the Ohlone Nation, who are a contiguous tribe of people since the very beginning. They have descendants still in this area today, and so we honor the ground upon which we stand, for which they have been wonderful stewards for centuries. We are right here, as you saw sweeping in. We are right at the coast, and today you're going to be seeing people go by. You're going to hear some beach activity because we've had a relief from the rainy weather like we're used to at Imbolc, and people are out and about wanting to be in proximity to this great planetary force of water, especially marine water. And so as we think about Brigid today, you know, she's a tremendous Celtic goddess, one of our triple-headed goddesses, and she has many, many aspects to her, but her elements are water and fire, often combined together as a power source. So keep that image in mind. And she's so associated with Celtic lands. And when I think of Celtic lands, I think primarily of two places on this planet. One is in the Highlands of Scotland, off the west coast, in very cold ocean environment, the Hebrides. We've got the inner and the outer Hebrides, and she's often associated with that location. We also have Ireland, which she is even more commonly associated with. Her healing well at Kildare, for example, but Ireland, which was never conquered by the Romans or the Scottish Highlands. Pure Celtic land, she's associated with that area too. Both of these environments are heavily ocean environments. They're islands. And in fact, if you've been there, or if you're there, you will get a lot of the same kind of energy as I'm tuning into right now here today on big ocean water, because the hydrological cycle is so dominant in these landscapes. Something I love about the Central California coast is it's very much like the coast on the Highlands of Scotland or in Ireland, and that is agriculture. Pasture lands, fields run right up next to the edge of ocean cliffs. So there's not a big inland or ocean separation. You'll have springs on the pasture lands, you'll have rivulets, you'll have streams, you'll have wells, and everything is running right toward the ocean. And it's all very close together, very compact in these island environments. So this is the terrain of Brigid. And the hydrological cycle, the way it works, is very much her domain. So just a quick review. Hydrological cycle, you may recall from like when you learned about the weather in kindergarten, we learned that, hey, you know, clouds happen and you get precipitation, usually like rainwater falling or snow or sleet, and it falls onto the mountains and snowpack or whatever, or it lands on the pasture lands or the ground, and it trickles into little streams and ponds, which move on down for rivers and lakes and eventually become bigger and bigger. And then all those tributaries form bigger bodies of water, fresh water, which eventually flow into the ocean. It so happens that right here, we have a little stream river that's also flowing right into the ocean. And then, of course, the ocean, most of the evaporation happens in the ocean, and it goes right back up over the ocean, formulates clouds, which then move back over the landmass, and the precipitation cycle starts all over again. So that's the hydrological cycle. 71% of this planet's surface is water. Water is an enormous element for Oceania. And 97% of that 71% is ocean. And I just submit to you, because we often think of Brigid's well as freshwater only. It's sweet water, it's a healing well, it's a well or a bowl or a domain of healing and birthing. And yet when we look at the bowl of our planet, Oceania, we see the majority of healing, birthing water is in fact marine as well. So we're here, we're sweet water and marine water combined together. And I'm interested in going to where Brigid's deepest domain on the planet could possibly be. This is a workshop called Intoning the Goddess. Whether or not you're someone who's going to do public ritual, public performance, or not, my hope is that this will be a 3-part practice that you can incorporate into your own spiritual practice that will help you to be in tune with the goddess Brigid, and then as appropriately to tone that goddess's voice that's coming up from within you. So in classical vocal work, there are sort of 3 things that we focus on. First is you need to connect to a power source. And when you connect to that power source, that's going to be the foundation for what supports your breath and supports your tone. So connecting to a power source. The second thing is you need to work with a sort of channel of different vibratory sources, as we call it, without pinching or compressing or blocking or resisting. So we're looking for an open vibratory source channel through which the energy from the power source is able to flow. And then your resonators are going to be the things that shape the sound that comes out of you, that actually tones. And if you're someone even who doesn't use words, perhaps you're someone who uses tone as a primary language. Or if you're someone who doesn't even make sound, I'm hoping that you will find the preparatory phases of this practice useful for you, for helping to inspire and amplify whatever form of language you use, whether it's gesture and movement or something else. So I've taken those 3 principles of classical vocal work and I've applied them to working with Brigid in particular. And this is a deep devotional that I have for her. So we're going to look first at tuning in with Brigid before we move to toning Brigid. So much of what goes wrong in vocal performance is that people leap to toning before they've done any preparatory work. And yet our bodies are human instruments. And you know, if you've done any work with an instrument, you know it takes discipline, which is consistent applied action, doing a little bit every day to practice scales, to tune in with your instrument, to keep your instrument in tune, and that only over time do you feel the cumulative effect of getting more and more facile at working with your instrument. Your instrument, when it first feels sort of forced or technical, after a while, it will become more integrated, it'll become more intuitive. Vocal work is the same way. When I was doing conservatory training in the days that, were heavily performance-based for me, I would spend about 2 hours a day tuning my instrument and tuning in as preparation for any kind of performance I would do. You don't have to spend 2 hours a day on this practice, but I'm suggesting to you, if you start to incorporate it and use it and refer to it more often, you will start to see a change in the quality of your vocal work. And that's my hope, is that you'll enjoy what that change is about. So the first thing we're going to look at is how to connect with Brigid in her deepest domain and bring that energy up into your domain. We're going to do that first because that's going to be your power source. After that, we're going to look at how do you use that energy that you've brought to hermetically move and open those channels within you. That vibratory source then becomes an open channel that's well tuned. And then when we get to the actual toning part, how do you remember to shape the sound with the front of your face and not pinch off or burn out or shred anything in your vibratory sources. So that's kind of what we're going to look at. So I don't know if you can see this, but I invite you, if you do, to go ahead, stand comfortably. I hope you're wearing something comfortable. If you can't stand, if you remain seated, put your hand right here. Put your hand over your pubis. And if you can, put your other hand on the back of your tailbone. Feel where that tailbone is. For those of you familiar with the chakra system, Ayurvedic medicine, yoga, you know, for example, or Eastern traditions, maybe Qigong or Tai Chi or some of those less percussive martial arts, you know that this tailbone here is what we call your base or root chakra. And in so many systems of movement and energy, this base or root chakra is what's known as the center of your being. This is actually the center of your being in your pelvic bowl. So I want you to just go ahead and lovingly put your hands on either side of your pelvic bowl as you're able. Tilt it forward a little bit. Tilt it back a little bit. To the left a little bit. To the right a little bit. Go ahead and move around with this pelvic bowl and move it the other way a little bit. You know, I grew up in Honolulu where I learned hula early, and there are wonderful island cultures that embrace their pelvis. You know, they really celebrate this center power source in our bodies. This is, of course, where we make offspring, right? This is a source of emotion. It's a source of creativity. It's a source of balance and of grounding. So love this pelvic bowl. Just take a moment to be in touch with that right there physically. So many pagan theologies, it applies pretty much across the board universally. We're an embodied theology. We don't feel that exploring the sacred or expressing the sacred is somehow outside of ourselves. We experience it in the body, in nature. And so this is the origin. This is the central place where we begin. Now to ground and connect with the power source of Brigid, we want to do some creative visualization here. So I'm going to ask you to be comfortable. If you're standing and can stand, think of a neutral position. I'm in a neutral position. And with your pelvic bowl, make sure that as you feel it, that it's sort of suspended, free floating, that it's not pushed forward, that it's not back, that you're not doing this, that it's just free floating. And it feels very comfortable. It feels like you're suspended. There's no gravity challenge going on there. If you're seated, you can sort of shift a little bit to see where you feel no resistance, no compression if possible, right? So imagine that. And now I want to invite you to put your hands out. And I want to ask you to visualize being in a body of water. It can be fresh water, sweet water, marine water, but I want the water to be still. It needs to be still, like a well. And I want you to imagine yourself suspended in that water with your arms resting on top of the water and the rest of your body floating below it. And again, this water is soothing. It's wonderfully peaceful, just like that pelvic bowl freely floating. You are freely floating in this water. There's no sense of gravity. Just take a moment to just relish that sense of buoyancy, that sense of completely being without compression or resistance or strain. This is healing water. It feels good to be there. We're going to move quickly through these now. Normally, if we're a workshop like this, it would take me 2 hours. I don't have that time. So if you're taking notes, you can come back to this later and take as much time as you need at first. So just please excuse the fact that I'll have to move along. Okay, once you're sitting there suspended in that water, if you're seated, you can imagine your knees up as if you're seated, but still suspended, seated or standing. And then I want you to visualize that tailbone, that base root chakra. I want you to see it. And I want you to imagine a cord coming out of that tailbone, coming out of that root chakra and going down into the water, hanging down from your tailbone. This grounding cord can be anything. It can be a rainbow ribbon. It can be a string of conch shells. It could be an umbilical cord. It's up to you. You're going to visualize it, and I would encourage you to go with whatever comes into your mind. And I want you to see yourself hanging or sitting there in the water with this grounding cord coming out of your root chakra. And I want you to follow this grounding cord now down through the water. Follow it down, down, down through the water. There you go. And eventually you're going to get to the water's floor. It's going to be earth that you touch. You're going to get to the pond's floor, the well's floor, the ocean floor, all the way down. And then your grounding cord's going to go through that ground. It's going to go through that ground. And what's there underneath? Are you seeing little volcanic fissures of steam? Are you seeing more silt and sand? And you're going down, down, down into the earth. You're heading toward the center of the earth. And as you go, as you visualize that grounding cord going all the way down, eventually you'll start to see a magma core, a liquid fire, molten lava core, just like a beautiful cauldron. And you see steam around it where the water is sort of touching the liquid fire. And this is the center of the planet. This, I submit to you, is the deepest forge of Brigid, the deepest place where she resides, where water and fire are coming together. And when you think about what happens in the ocean as magma is released and volcanic fissures create over and over again, new land mass builds and builds upon itself with water and steam and earth, and then will become new land. So here we are in the depths of Brigid's deepest forge down at the center of the earth. I want you to see that grounding cord connecting to it. Connect to it, anchor yourself in that magma, make sure it's anchored. And then once you feel it's really anchored, I want you to imagine that liquid fire starting to move back up through that grounding cord. And it's not too hot. It's warm, it's nourishing, right? It's warm and nourishing, and it's moving back up the grounding cord, and it's coming back up from the magma center, back up through the crust of the earth, back up through the sand and silt and mud and whatever you're visualizing, back up into the water. As it touches water again, you see steam coming off of your grounding cord. Because steam is an energizer, and you see that steam and that liquid fire coming back up into your root chakra, your base chakra. Now I want you to continue seeing yourself suspended, but now you've got this grounding cord connected, and I want you to see that what is in your root chakra is a forge. The forge is something that requires water and fire together. It's a bowl of liquid fire. There's water around it. And it is one of the aspects of Brigid. She was a patron of the forge. She's a patron of poetry. And we're going to use those two aspects of her today in talking about voice. So the forge is where we build something creative. We create energy to shape matter, right? We are using a lot of energy. So now the second part of moving this energy that you've just brought up from Brigid's deepest domain into your power center is to take this power, this connected now goddess power source, and we're going to shoot it up your chakra system to make sure that your vibratory sources are nice and open and are not being pinched off or clamped down or shut off. So a disclaimer here is this is going to involve some deep breathing in a minute. And if you are someone who, for whatever reason, is not used to doing real deep breathing, deep abdominal breathing, breathing that's opening up your chakra system, if you start to do this, go easy on yourself, because it's not at all uncommon for people to feel a little nausea, a little resistance in their stomach, or if you've had trauma, to feel all of a sudden a lot of catharsis, tears or feelings coming up that maybe have been shut off or clamped down, because opening up your energy, your internal hermetic energy, and opening up your breath as a way to open it is something that can take a little bit of getting used to if that's not a way you've lived in your body for a while. So again, this can be a cumulative process. Do it a little bit, be patient with yourself, And as things open more and more, you'll have less of a reaction to it. And it's a healing benefit. If you have any questions about that experience or need to talk to somebody about it, always feel free to reach out to me or other Circle Sanctuary ministers, because we care about your experience as you're exploring a new practice. So now, going back to our creative visualization, we're going to work on opening up and connecting with our vibratory sources. Very simply, in vocal work, your vibratory sources are your chest, your throat, your larynx, and your pharynx, which is at the base of your tongue in the back. The larynx is at the top of your windpipe and has two little flesh folds called your voice box that rub together. It also includes your head, and your head has a buccal cavity, or your mouth, and that's your soft palate, your hard palate, your tongue, and your teeth and lips. So everything in there. And then above that, you have a nasal cavity that extends from your sinuses up to the top of the inside of your skull. Those are your vibratory sources, and they're also going to be your resonators too. But your vibratory sources, very often, what people do if they blow their voice is they don't do any preparatory work. They're not supporting the sound they're making with anything that's deeply connected, and they're just trying to shoot out from a throat or head vibratory source. So we'll get to that in a minute. Going back to our visualization, you're hanging in the water, either seated or standing, you're suspended. You're seeing this forge that's now in your pelvic bowl. It's got liquid fire, water, steam. In Qigong, which is an ancient Eastern system, they actually refer to that as a rice cooker, and that steam you're generating as something that's going to energize Qi, your life force. So using the imagery of Brigid, this is the forge, right? And it's deeply connected to Brigid's energy that she's sending up to you from her deepest forge domain in the earth. So we're back there. And what I now want to ask you to visualize is a big billows that's sitting right next to that bowl of liquid fire. And this isn't a little billows like when you use in your home fireplaces. This isn't that's prana breathing. That's not what we're talking about. If you've ever seen like a blacksmithery forge billow, they're big. They're like my size. You have to work hard. Sometimes two people have to pull it up to fill it up and then push it down. So very often 1 to 2 people would be there working the forge, and it was a total body workout to do that while the blacksmith was sitting there working with the water and the fire cooling and heating to shape whatever element they were making. So with that billow in mind, I want to invite you to breathe this way. This is full exchange breathing. Breathe in through your nose fully, and when you breathe out, I want you to purse your lips. So you go. By doing that, you're bringing the oxygen in more slowly and fully into your lungs so that all the little bronchioli at the end of your lungs are actually exchanging oxygen. And then when you breathe out, it's more slower, so you can't get rid of the oxygen too quickly, right? So I want you to imagine that when you breathe in, imagine that you're filling up that billow. When you breathe out, breathing in, breathe out. One more time, breathing in, breathe out. When you get practiced at this, you will find that you naturally start to fill your lower abdomen when you're breathing. You're not breathing into your lungs or your sternum. You're not breathing into your throat. You're breathing here, which is why I put physical gesture to it. If it helps you as you visualize yourself to imagine doing that, do it. Don't worry too much right now about where the breath lands. Just focus on that billow image, which is sitting right on top. And as you breathe out, I want you to be aware of shooting That liquid fire, that warm, nurturing liquid fire with steam, shoot it up your chakra channel. Shoot it up. So as you're breathing in, you're breathing into that abdomen and you shoot it out. Imagine going up to the top of your head, on the inside of your head, and try to see it not being blocked as easily. This is the inspiration of Awen. Brigid is associated with poetry. And in Celtic times, for sure, Druidic times, legendary poetry competitions that would go on for days and days and days for people who not only were spontaneously creative with lyrics, but it was the quality of their oratory, the timbre, the tone of it, the endurance of it, that was also legendary. You cannot do that without well-supported, inspired breath. That's what Awen refers to with Brigid, is that magical inspiration, inspire, to breathe in the breath of God or the goddess, and to allow that to support your hermetic energy in sending sound, right? So this is really important to get these vibratory sources open and not cut off. So once again, just to recap so far, you're suspended in a body of water, feeling no pressure. Your pelvic bowl is suspended gently. The grounding cord of whatever design goes all the way down to the bottom of the water floor, through the crust of the earth into the central magma, Brigid's deepest forge, where fire and water blend. You anchor into that. You start to draw that beautiful liquid fire and steam, that energizing liquid fire and steam back up through your grounding cord, all the way back up to the surface. And you land it in the forge. That is your pelvic bowl. It's your tailbone. It's your root-based chakra. And you see that beautiful liquid fire sitting there, energizing you like coals, like the coals of a hearth that just kind of keep that energy brewing. And now you see a billows right next to that, and you're going to add breath to this energy power source. You're going to breathe into this power source, and then you're going to send power from this source up through your open vibratory source chain, right? So breathing in, out, like an arrow, up through your vibratory sources, up to the top of your head. Keep that visualization going. This is the preparatory work for toning. Toning has to involve this preparatory work of grounding, connecting, and deep breathing, because without it, you don't produce the hermetic energy or the solid foundation that you need to sustain tone. Now, when we get to tone, we're actually talking about touching sound to breath. Touching sound to breath without restricting that sound. I want to demonstrate for you something, but first, the resonators that really help to shape the sound really involve typically the throat, the larynx, or they involve the mouth, sometimes the chest, or they involve the nasal cavity. Those are resonators. I want to give you examples of different kinds of sound that come out from those resonators. And I just want you to know, without judging, how the quality of that sound makes you feel, what it conveys. So if I'm going to resonate from my chest, I'm not breathing deeply, actually. I'm kind of breathing the shallow breathing into the chest, like that. And I'm exploding sound from my chest resonator. So it kind of comes across as a bark, often. Huh, 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 huh. Might be good for a kia in certain martial arts form. Huh, right? Might be good for that. Often associated with military language. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Or sports language. Huh, 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 huh. It's got a kind of percussive energy to it. That's not something you can generally sustain for a long time without hurting yourself. It's hard not to engage your vocal cords, but it's also not toning the goddess. It might be a stylistic choice as a punctuation, but it's not toning the goddess for a sustained kind of vocal work. Another thing that often happens is talking from the throat. This is even less, even more shallow breathing, where you're just, I mean, a lot of us go throughout the day, I know I do, unless I'm thinking about it, where, gosh, if I were admit it, I'm not even really breathing deeply at all. I'm just kind of, it's just kind of there. And then I'm talking from the throat, like I'm talking from the throat right now. You can hear I'm kind of talking from the throat. People who smoke can get a really kind of raspy, deep throaty kind of thing. You know, you might see that, but it's here because everything's here. Again, or sometimes, you know, like in rock singing, you might go, oh, wow, wow, like that, where, you know, vocal teachers just cringe when they hear that, because what you're basically doing is you're stripping your vocal cords, you're making those little things, and that's what happens when people say, I blew my voice, or I got laryngitis. I just decided for days and days I was just going to shout from my throat, right? And you hear the quality, but I'm really not projecting, I'm really just rubbing my larynx so much that it's going to blow out. It's not sustainable. So again, that can be a stylistic choice. It's not toning the goddess for a sustained, power-supported, medically driven kind of energy. And you'll know for yourself, you know, the emotional quality that comes from that kind of vocal work. It's not as resonant, doesn't have the same kind of timbre or tone. So those are common, I won't say mistakes, they're just common ways we can mindlessly use our voice without even thinking about it. So toning the goddess is trying to get past that. You don't want to be breathing so shallow that you're barking from your chest or that you're frying your vocal cords from your throat. Instead, another one that's very, very common is the nasal cavity. So right here, what you hear is the nasal cavity, and all I'm doing right now is I hardly breathe at all. In fact, a lot of the speech might happen when I'm kind of holding my breath. And what I've done in my nasal cavity is I'm pushing all of the sound that I'm producing up into my nasal cavity. And you'll often hear this with people who are trying to be submissive, you know, often with an upward intonation. And what it can convey is maybe a sense of like me or don't take me seriously. Or you might hear it in broadcasters a lot. Women broadcasters are really notorious for kind of having a hard nasal sound. That is not intoning the goddess. Again, might be a stylistic choice for a certain kind of punctuation or character, but it's not something that's sustainable over time, and it's generally not really pleasant to listen to. It doesn't speak of being connected to the deepest domain of Brigid's forge and bringing up that sacred voice through your body and out, right? So instead, when we're working with resonators, here's the thing, is if you have well-supported sound, the only place you should be feeling any vibration at all, not the chest, not the throat, it's in the lips. Because the goal of vocal work is twofold. It's to help the vocal performer to be able to sustain a lot of rigorous vocal work without hurting your instrument. And because your instrument is finely in tune, the goal is also to produce the most resonant, most flexible, and most pleasant to listen to sound that can move in all kinds of directions, from intense to tender, soft, loud, etc. So how do you do that without hurting yourself? So when you have this open channel that is well supported by this deep billows breathing, and you're connected to the goddess in your power source, and you're sending that energy up through your vibratory source channel, the only place that it should be landing is here. So this is tricky. This is called the Y buzz. In vocal work, it's called the Y buzz, and I'm going to show you why. And it takes a while to get it. If you haven't been doing vocal work, be gentle on yourself. It comes. And when you get it, you know it. You know it. So don't know if you can hear it, but it's vibrating right behind my lips. It's not catching here or here. I'm coming in closer so you can see my ridiculous lips. That's when you know that your energy and your breath are well supported enough. It's the only place where you're feeling tone, once you've sort of dared to put tone to breath, is right here behind your lips. It tickles. It tickles. You feel it vibrate. Then you start doing Waiba's vowel work, which is a typical sort of, vocal warm-up. I don't know if you can hear the quality of that. That's very different than a throat E, right? All the sound and tone is being channeled right to the teeth and the lips. Then you go ooh, which is the next easiest one to do. Very different from right? And again, it's coming up from that forge in your pelvis, and it's not being blocked anywhere, so that the breath, the sound is riding on the breath, and it's all being channeled toward the front of your face. That was ooh, E-oo. Harder one is O, because you have to really shape your lips forward. And, we Americans tend not to want to use our mouths a lot. We're not used to going ooh, ah, ooh, as much, so it can feel a little weird. But you'll notice that people who sing and have beautiful tone, they really open their mouths up in the back and they really use their lips. So O. Very different than oh, right? Finally, the hardest one is ah. You have to really open your mouth. You have to open up and practice for a second with your mouth closed. Do like an internal yawn. You have to open up that buccal cavity and go ah. Very different than ah, right? It's got a different tone to it. You might feel it, but for people listening to you, even as you start to form speech, the mouth is open, the channel is supported, and the sound is being shaped at the front of your mouth, which has a very different quality to it than if it's being shaped in your nose or being shaped in your throat or being shaped in your chest. So that's the point. And there isn't any strain in that. So that same sense of being suspended in the water and connected doesn't go away. You sustain that sense of ease as you project. So again, tone is putting sound to breath, but it's well-supported breath. So after you've gotten used to opening up those different vibratory sources, when you're comfortable with that, as you keep that billows breathing going, you can start to put sound to breath and practice moving your mouth and shaping the sound at the front. Now, a word about words is that words are formed with your lips, your tongue, and your teeth. Your lips, your tongue, and your teeth. So if the sound is always vibrating at the front of your face where you want it, then the enunciation that you'll hear about is formed with your lips, your tongue, and your teeth. You can hear me doing that right now. It's not about your whole mouth chewing like that. Not helpful. It's about the lips, the tongue, and the teeth really being used. And at first, if you're not used to doing this, you might feel ridiculous. I know when I first started learning French, everything was forward, and I thought, wow, I haven't used my lips, my tongue, and my teeth so much at all. So at first, again, these things can feel a little strange and technical, but they become more intuitive. The beauty of this is that while you maintain that sense of connection and ease with no strain, no friction anywhere, the sound is being produced at the front of your mouth and you are shaping that. It works whether you're talking very intimately on a camera like we are right now, or if you want to be really tender and that's the quality of emotion you're putting across. It works exactly the same way. If I'm out in a public environment and I'm supporting it with breath, I'm shaping it. Nothing is different about the supported sound, but I'm shaping it and I'm just projecting even more. I'm pushing my breath up even more, breathing deeply, bringing it up, sending it out, and it can be used for outrage without hurting my voice. It can be used to call and invoke the deities of all directions. It can be used to invoke Brigid from her ocean domain. It may seem silly on camera, but imagine if you were performing Shakespeare, as I used to do. You'd have to do 2 hours of that. Or if you're in public ritual, and you might want people to be able to hear you and understand what you're saying, you need to be able to do this. You can't meander and just kind of talk from the throat. You need to be grounded. You need to have warmed up with your connection and opening your vibratory systems. And then from here, well supported, you can go up, you can go down, you can go loud, you can go soft. And no matter what you do, you're not harming your human instrument, which is the temple to Brigid. And you are starting the work of intoning that beautiful energy that has come up from the earth's core into your system through your vibratory sources, up and down. More like a tuning fork. The goal is to try and tune for Brigid's presence among us. So you're becoming that tuning fork, which is vibrating here and out. So this takes time and practice. It also has real therapeutic advantage. Learning to sigh deeply on fully open breath, as I said, can really help in the physical or energetic work to overcome PTSD and resolve grief, trauma for sure. It really helps with doing the work of anger, of outrage, which can be very productive. It's also very nurturing. Like if I do a lot of work with traumatized animals or with children really, they're responding to the emotion. And emotion is your energy coming across. And our voices convey energy, not so much by the words we're saying, but what it feels like to be in the presence of that voice. So my son will tease me, but he's seen me work with a lot of traumatized animals saying, Mama nashta, Mama nashta na. And all I'm doing is channeling that connected voice. And without fail, whether it's a large stellar sea lion or a baby squirrel or a dog or a human baby, that being will look up and will immediately feel more calm and start to close their eyes and feel more trust. Because again, the voice of the goddess, if you're channeling it and intoning it freely, is amazingly healing. And so today, this is just a little introduction into a practice with these 3 parts that I hope can somehow be incorporated into your own personal practice. And I hope that in this way you can appreciate the healing power of Brigid's fire and water working together from the deepest domain in her Oceania planet up into the power source of your root chakra, brought up more and more, building that cone of power, opening up your vibratory sources, and landing like the surface of your drum at the front of your face, which is that drum surface that's going to produce the quality of sound and the shape of sound that you then intone forth for inspiration, for wisdom, for healing, for trust building. Thank you so much for being with me and allowing me to be with you on this Imbolc. Blessed be, so mote it be. So in this way, I've been showing you how to practice anywhere you go, anywhere you are. You can create a temple to Brigid by using this toning practice that connects to her and connects others to her.
Under Our Lady. Written by Stag and inspired by a moonlit ritual at Circle Sanctuary. Standing with your hands in mine, we could share the moon tonight, like Sister Twilight plucking down a silver dollar from the sky to us for luck. Glancing across the smoke and flame, calling the whirlwind by name, that takes our dancing devotions to the goddess of shadow and delight, continuing to spin our eyes full of stars. Dancing with you round the bonfire, making magic most magnificent, our voices pouring out the song of the summer wind that leaves us panting on the dewy grass. Raining and wandering, we work our way from the fire, following constellations and shooting stars, hand in hand in hand, flowing over with love under Our Lady. Cemetery Road. Written by Tempest Stralka Style and inspired by the road to the Green Cemetery at Circle Sanctuary. As we walk this cemetery road, the road of our beloved ones, the road most taken, listen, be still. Pause between the prairie grass, the quiet breeze, the future past. This is where our ancestors walk. We are coming home. Walk there between the slender trees where so many of our company lie. Like Brigid's bells beneath the snow, our eyes won't see their slow growth pass. Yet here they rest, and here we know that same as springborn light they rise. We are coming home. Now pull the water from the well. Now let the sacred flame burn high. We walk our memories, the blessings of souls we know will never die. So as we walk this prairie road, be full of love, those hearts which mourn. For when we walk that road most traveled, we know we do not walk alone. We walk together to their rest. We walk to where the soul's reborn. We are coming home. Ice Oak. Written by Crow and inspired by the leafless winter trees of Circle Sanctuary. Tracery of snow on sky, the choke of oak beneath the ice. It is a season for stillness and blueness, sky bereft where the birds don't fly, like a clear mind without thoughts that have all migrated south for the winter. In this pure, good emptiness, I find rest in the snow. Endless doing, now is so much ceasing. Bright and cold sun spears me, lights me up without warmth, without all these lower stirrings. Instead, I let those things sleep. My passion can burn the summer alive, but now I can see clear to the horizon. I can see clear to my heart, the line between the sunset and my sternum, an interconnection of quiet. This is why I stand here. This is why I love this season. Out on the oak-topped crest, I can disappear into the peace that comes with faith.